970 AM, 104.9 FM, KSYL. It's Talkback with Matthew Dunn and Jim Leggett, Central Louisiana's longest-running talk show. Call 442-8255, 442-TALK. Whether it's the guests or the calls, Talkback is where Central Louisiana begins its conversation.
Hour number 2 off and rolling here on this sort of drizzly, misty Tuesday. It is, of course, the 12th day of February 2019. We hope it's going well for you out there. I'm Matthew Dunn, the host, and he is Jim Leggett, your political analyst. Always thrilled once a month to be joined by the mayor of the city of Pineville, Clarence Fields. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, gentlemen. How are y'all?
We are doing wonderful. Welcome back to the show, as always. You know, Mayor, it seems like now is finally the culmination of something that we have talked about really for what seems like the past 6 months or so, and that is tonight's city council meeting will probably be about as action-packed / filled with different things involving alcohol, tobacco, not so much firearms, at least we hope, but certainly a lot of various subjects to get to today. That didn't go. Whenever you're a host,
it was a good idea at first.
It seemed like it was good in my brain.
I don't know what he was trying to do.
And then I thought about it, and I said, "Oh boy." Anyway, good morning, sir.
Morning. Meeting's going to last about 15 minutes. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah.
Obviously, you speaking of that particular issue, it's just kind of to jog memories back on December the 8th last year, 2018. People voted on the 5 different measures relative to alcohol, and obviously they all passed. And I tell people, people ask me, how things going, what you up to, and I say, well, I'm up to here in alcohol, because putting together, it's really this is not something that I guess you could call it sometimes, depending on it can be once in a lifetime. It's still like doing a franchise agreement.
Yeah.
They don't come along very often, or something of this nature does not happen very often, and then you realize, not only myself, but the city council, our legal team, and many other, so much thanks to David Humphreys over at the Rapides Parish Tax Administration Office. We cannot get this accomplished, what needs to get accomplished when it comes to the ordinance that we've been trying to put together. And he's just been, my thanks to him. And also, there's the local ATF agent, alcohol tobacco agent or whatever. He's been really, involved in a lot of our meetings and, kind of going through this ordinance and doing the things that are necessary. And I tell people, now that people have made a decision, our responsibility, whether we are in favor of it or not, our responsibility is to manage it. Mm-hmm. And, that's what we think we'll be able to do, is manage it. So there's a lot that's come about over the past couple of months in putting this together. I believe I think the council has been obviously involved, just so many questions that they've asked, and ideas and all the above. Now it's a matter of putting it all on in that ordinance and presenting it tonight. It's been introduced, but it's been tweaked, I can tell you, for over the last 30 days quite a bit, and that's necessary to come out with a final form tonight, and I think the council will vote on that, hopefully unanimously, to move forward.
I asked you this last month, and you tried to answer the question as best you could, but you even said, look, it's a little murky right now for me to try to answer that question. So if Jim or I happen to be in the city of Pineville and want to go buy a bottle of Crown Royal or whatever it is at a grocery store, at a whatever,
correct?
Okay. When is that looking like that's now going to happen?
That's looking like now, based on what potential will happen tonight in March.
Wow. So originally you thought April, now it's March.
Yeah,
okay.
It could potentially happen in March, but I'll still hang that April thing out there. Still a little bit of work to do. It's not just somebody just, we pass an ordinance tonight and people start putting it on the shelves and start selling it to you. There's a waiting period.
Sure.
There's also a period where, there's some things that they have to abide by. There's a checklist that they have to begin at City Hall relative to if you're properly zoned and things of that nature, just a lot to it. And then from there, then it goes to the Rapides Parish Tax Administrator, who then, does his part in literally verifying everything that we we are sending him. And by the way, we will also at the meeting tonight, or I will attempt to anyway, appoint a 5-member alcohol commission board. And right now, I can tell you I have 4 names, and I've got 1 more to get, and I'll make that recommendation to the city council on this evening. And that's difficult too, because you know it's hard to get people. And this is this is an interesting commission that because of their responsibilities when it comes to dealing with whether it's complaints because of an establishment or appeal processes and things of that nature by complainants or even by citizens. So that's what they have to work with. But we think that'll go over very smoothly. The key is the beginning. The beginning is just, it's big. And, everybody, all of a sudden, I've never seen so many potential daiquiri shops that might locate whatever. So everybody wants a piece of the pie now.
Well, and along those lines, this is kind of ancillary to that.
Mm-hmm.
But, Matt and I were talking yesterday, the state has lost 10,000 in population. That's not so in the Lake Charles area and all that. This area is stagnant as usual. But have you noticed any trends at all about businesses coming in because of the alcohol and whether Pineville's going to grow now? A lot more than it has.
Yeah, the potential is there. I think people from the outside looking in, businesses potentially locating will look at it a little bit differently now. But early on, I don't believe, because of my personal opinion for the most part, because of the economy and where the economy is and I guess you could say the lack of confidence in the economy. I'm not sure right off the bat because of this issue with alcohol that people are going to come flowing in.
Well, because we also talked, there's a lot prettier property in Pineville, to be honest, than in Alexandria. And I'm just wondering if that's the
mayor
threshold.
looked at me just like that, and he goes, I can't really. I mean, he's like, I'm going to promote my
open
city,
declaration of war.
But
we are we're very proud of our city. It's a very and obviously there's been a concern what's going to happen as far as the city itself, the environment, the atmosphere because of this issue. We don't believe it's going to change. Okay, and that's our responsibility is to manage it, and but we also have to recognize at the same time demographics have changed, people's mindset has changed, and all the above, and that's why the vote probably went the way that it went, and all, and we have to respect that, and that's the way of the world now, and you have to adjust to it.
I had a conversation with an older gentleman who lives in Pineville. He asked me not to mention his name, so I'll do just that. And we were having a good conversation about alcohol in Pineville,
Mm-hmm.
and he's in his early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I've lived in Pineville most of my life. And he said, I have to admit, I never thought I'd see this day. But he said, 25 years ago, I wouldn't have been for this. But he says, now I am. And he talked about how with you guys not owning, and I know that Clico does a lot in the community, and we love Clico,
right.
But with not owning your own city utilities, you don't get nearly the revenue that, say, in Alexandria or other municipalities who do own their utilities get. With that said, it seems like people who wouldn't normally be for this are making an exception because your city does need money.
Yeah, there's no doubt the city needs money, but I remind people again, this is not the savior. This is not going to
right.
And because there are other things that we need to do, but our responsibility is to educate people what the needs are for this city government, Pineville, to make sure that we continue to give citizens what they expect, and we believe that we provide the best of the best in the services that we currently deliver, but it costs, and people have to realize there's a part that they have to play in there as far as the cost is concerned and whatever. If you talked about, there are a lot of factors when you talk about as far as the city of Pineville and the need for revenues and the impact or whatever. You talked about the utilities. I talk about that all the time because we don't own our gas system. We don't own our electrical system. And that makes it really, really tough. The other part about that, too, is that we're not the parish seat, and there's some other things that you have to look at when you talk about the city of Pineville versus other municipalities around the state of Louisiana, based on what they actually have in their city. Fortunately, we do have some of the industry on our side, but that industry is advantageous for all of central Louisiana, and all of that industry is not inside our corporate limits, and that's for lack of better words, that's a game you have to play to be sure, because some of those entities, when you talk about industry or whatever, you try to be competitive, but people don't believe somebody can pick up and move somewhere else, but it can happen. And, that's important.
Random subject before we kind of continue with what's going on at the city council meeting, because we got to get into this tobacco ordinance here in a little bit. But yesterday, someone asked me the question. It says, Matt, this was yesterday afternoon. Matt, I know that you're having the mayor of Pineville on tomorrow. I'm not sure that I'll be able to listen live, but I'm going to listen on the podcast. Could you ask Mayor Fields about the increased traffic in Pineville, particularly Highway 28? And some other areas. And, this is from a Carol who lives in Pineville. Okay. And I actually, one of my gyms closed in Alexandria, so I've been going to Pineville every day after work to go work out. And I have noticed that specifically during afternoon commute times, that traffic can back up a little bit in Pineville, and I've gotten caught in that. I know that that's very difficult because of the way it's laid out, but can you elaborate a little bit on that?
We work with DOTD all the time on traffic issues. Obviously, a lot of the traffic issues on state highways and all the above. If you look, if we could look back 20, 25 years and say, man, we should have done this back then. That's the truth, and that's why we are working with them, trying to do what we can now. We're not going to solve the problem. I can tell you, I live on Edgewood Drive, 1 block down from Pineville Junior High School, and it's a nightmare, getting in and out of my dead-end street. And DOTD, through their efforts, through adjusting, it's not that you can just start. You can shut a road down and start construction and widening and all the above. That's a whole nother issue. But primarily, it's a funding issue, and that's a big obstacle that we face. So you look for other ways to try to move traffic as best you possibly can in the meantime. And then hopefully there are things that people don't like to talk about, and I don't mind mentioning them, because from where we sit, there are some things that could help improve traffic. A lot of people do not like the roundabout concept. We at the city of Pineville, depending on where it may be or whatever, we think it can be advantageous to keep traffic flowing all the above, instead of what DOTD has to do is literally adjust timing on red lights and things of that nature to try to move traffic. A perfect example, at Donahue and Edgewood Drive, they've adjusted the cycle of the lights there, where on Edgewood Drive the traffic actually gets to move more so than the ones coming off of Donahue, to try to keep that traffic from stacking. And it's pretty interesting.
Well, now that I've been in Pineville a lot more recently because of my gym being over there, I have to admit that there's this right by King's Country, right when you get off of the highway there and you get on to, 28, you're getting off, and you have an option to veer right, to yield into traffic. That doesn't mean stop.
Yeah, correct.
I wish there was a sign there that says go.
Well, and Matt, by the way, there is a sign, I think, that's there, but that, and I'll have to look again, but
okay. There might be.
There's 2 or 3 areas like that. There's one on 165 as you come off of the expressway to go up 165, and there's a right lane all the way to the right that you can either take a right into the Lowe's complex, and you're not supposed to stop, or you can merge into the traffic on 165, and people it's a matter of paying attention. In some cases, watching signage, and it's interesting sometimes how we as Louisianians drive, but we just got to pay more attention to what we're doing out there.
Very, very true. All right, we're going to take our first break. When we come back with the mayor, there is a second major part to the meetings that will take place this evening with the city council, and it's a tobacco ordinance. It kind of quietly, unless you're Mayor Fields and his office, snuck up on most of us, as I was talking with a Pineville resident yesterday who works for Sinlaw Broadcasting, and I went, oh my, you're right. I forgot that was coming up. So we'll get into that right after this.
970 AM, 104.9 FM, KSYL. You're listening to Talk Back on KSYL 970 AM and 104.9 FM. You can join the conversation by calling 442-8255. That's 442-TALK.
Welcome back here to Talk Back, Tuesday edition of the show as we continue with Pineville Mayor Clarence Fields, talking everything north of the river right now. If you have a phone call and want to get in a take, feel free to do so at 442-8255. Mayor, the other half of the meeting tonight that will obviously have some additional discussion. I don't want to use the word controversy because I think people too easily throw that out there, but certainly bearing a little more mentioning is this tobacco ordinance. Before you take this and run with it, Jim and I are paid to give opinion here. I'm pretty libertarian when it comes to alcohol and tobacco and marijuana. I'm kind of whatever you choose to do is your business as long as you're not driving a vehicle or doing things that you choose not to do. When it comes to tobacco, though, I have one thing. You can smoke a carton a day for all I care, but if you do it indoors, I don't want to be around you. Yeah. And I don't think that that's fair to people who do not smoke, especially children, for having secondhand smoke possibilities.
Well, I would prefer that it be even tougher than that, but especially indoors. But when you're smoking indoors, you're infringing everybody else that's indoors too, and that's not fair.
Exactly. But
even the perimeter, like 25 feet from the wall and all that, you still got to go through a wall of smoke to get inside.
Well, all right. Well, I guess we will disagree. If someone's outside, I mean, you're not going to take you but a split second to walk through it. But go ahead.
Outside in a designated area.
Fine.
Okay.
Fine.
That I think that's the key to sometimes a lot of it. And this kind of defines that a little bit relative to being, obviously inside it's going to have an impact on every public building. And as much as we can do as government, particularly when it comes to state law in some other places, some other employers now, we don't control that for the most part or whatever, but it's going to be pretty strict. Let me remind you also, because Jim was alluding to this a little bit earlier, when you talk about ordinances and whatever happens tonight and whatever the council passes or if they pass, whether it's the smoking ordinance or the alcohol ordinance, it will be in its final form. But that does not say that, along the way, as you discover things that you believe have an impact because there's absolutely no way. Mark Villar, who is our city attorney, I'm sure he's been pulling his hair out the past couple of months because, every time you look up, you discover something. And the reason being is because and what we've tried to do is condense everything down, both of these ordinances, where they can be particularly understood, hopefully, and all the above, instead of all of that verbiage. And then you go back and you find in this section there's something that literally contradicts something else in another section. So that's what we're trying to do. Same thing with the smoking ordinance, trying to make it as strict as we possibly can, but at the same time something that can be manageable. And then as we move along, and the reason that this came up now, it actually came up, a year and a half ago, and the city council did not, it was tabled because there was so much to it, and it was so big and all the above, and then so many people had so many different opinions, and, we had to sit back and take a breath and come back and do this again and put it in a form that we could manage. And I think that's where we're headed now. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be satisfaction to, some people and all the above, but the time comes later on where, you're going to go back and you're going to, make amendments or whatever it may be in any ordinance.
You bring up an interesting point. If it was tabled, does it have a statute of limitations, or does it carry forward and it takes a 2/3 vote to bring it off the table?
Well, if it's tabled, it'll sit for a year. And then we can bring it back.
Oh, without a vote?
Yeah, you can bring it back without a vote. Okay. So it was introduced last month. Okay. And now this month will be in its final form tonight, and hopefully it's something that they're going to pass.
So, Mayor, if you could, I don't know if you have the exact language in front of you. Can you either read the ordinance or explain the ordinance, or a little bit of both? Or
yeah, the ordinance is pretty simple, and it's an ordinance, as far as making Pineville smoke free. And the purpose of it is, it finds and determines that it's in the best interest of people, and that's what we're looking at, to protect non-smokers from involuntary, smoke in public places, in particular, secondhand smoke in particular. So, yeah, and then what you have to do, you have to define those places, and we've tried to be a little bit specific, particularly when it comes to and kind of cover some loopholes. One being bars, and then it talks about businesses. And that means any corporation or sole proprietorship, partnership, limited partnership, things of that nature, enterprise. And it also talks about the employer, and that's any employer that employs one or more individuals. There's some standards in here that they need to also follow at the same time. So it's a lot to it, but it's very simple. You can't smoke in an enclosed environment. Restaurants, for instance, we also restaurants sometimes have patios, and let's say in the back of them and all the above. This covers that also, where you're still exposing individuals to secondhand smoke. If there's an outside patio, well, you with this particular ordinance also, you can't smoke on the outside patio on at a restaurant. Because
have you got any pushback from restaurants on that?
We've not gotten any pushback from anybody. Okay. I don't believe we're going to get pushback on anybody on this particular issue or whatever. So we'll see what happens. When we first introduced it, there was really no pushback. There was just some I'm gonna call it I think arm twisting, pressure, and all the above, and sometimes people don't deal with that very well, and we didn't feel like that was necessary. Let us sit down, have conversation, not necessarily compromise, but go over all what people want and what they think and all the above, and then it's the responsibility of us, the administration and the city council, then to put all that together. A little bit different now from the alcohol. The alcohol is more or less law. Okay, there's some do's and don'ts, and different communities may handle it differently, but they're not far from each other, I can tell you, when it comes to alcohol legislation.
Well, let me say this, and people have to understand, too, about, I get smokers' rights, certainly, but people don't realize this. According to, and this survey was done last year, but according to the Centers for Disease Control, only 8% of Americans smoke right now, and Louisiana, of course,
7% of them must be in Alexandria.
Well, Louisiana ranks 48th in the country. Only Alabama is worse than us, and then Mississippi is the worst. So we are 48th in the country. It says that 12% of Louisianians smoke. So it's still a relatively small number, believe it or not.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's not going to go away.
No.
But, I think just minimize the impact on those who, and it needs to be minimized. So, but we think it's pretty simple. I really don't think it's going to be a long, drawn-out thing. And I go back again, nothing's perfect. And, we can always make the necessary. And the reason we felt like we needed to bring it up at this time was because of the alcohol issue. It was because of, potential of bars and places of that nature or whatever. And we want to minimize that as much as we possibly can.
We'll go ahead and take a break and come back more with Pineville Mayor Clarence Fields. We'll get out of some of the controversy, talk about fun things like the Light the Night Parade and other things like that coming up in the city of Pineville. Stay tuned.
Back to the conversation of Talkback. You're welcome to join in by calling 442-8255. That's 442-TALK.
Welcome back to Talkback as we continue our monthly discussion with Pineville Mayor Clarence Fields. And Mayor, you got a question. This is a good question from Brandon in Pineville, who says, Matt, I would like to know about the Cigar Club that's in Pineville on Main Street that allows people to smoke inside. Will that still be allowed, or will that be cut out with this ordinance?
Well, with this ordinance, we can't by law cut them out, and that's something that we're looking at. I go back to the public-private thing. You got to be very careful sometimes how you approach some of these things. But right now, everything that we can see, the Cigar Club is illegal. Jim was alluded to the fact about grandfatherization, if you want to call it that. All of the new ones coming in don't fall up under any kind of grandfather clause. But that's something that you're always looking at, something of that nature or whatever, because there are other concerns when you talk about, let's say, a cigar club versus a vape shop or something of that nature or whatever. And we know some of the discussions that are happening about that. So those are things actually really that we have been looking at. I'll be very honest with you. And you can ask our city attorney. He's really been scratching his head and then working with David Humphreys over at the tax administration office and looking at specifics like that and how to handle those kinds of specifics that are, pointing at one particular operation or one particular area of operation. So
now let me ask you this. You may or may not know this. I really don't know. This is because I'm not familiar with the place, but
right.
Is this a club to where you have to pay a monthly membership or anything like that? Because if it was a private club, such as a gym, like an Alexandria Golf and Country Club, something like that, I could see them kind of almost like a private school, not having to report financial disclosures and things like that. For instance, in the NCAA, LC does not have to report what they pay a coach or whatever, things like that. See where I'm going with that? Is that how that club works?
Yeah, I'm not sure relative to having a membership fee, if you want to call it that. I really have no idea as far as the concept is concerned, other than walking in there and sitting down and having food or buying cigars and smoking inside that facility. I'm really not sure of that, but I'll find answers to that question.
Gotcha. Right. Okay, what is to wrap up the city council meeting while we got another 2-3 minutes left in this segment? What else is on the agenda that we have yet to discuss?
We'll hear from Mark McKay, who's our auditor, with our audit report, obviously for the past fiscal year, and we'll get an idea of where we are and what our needs are, and are there any findings, discrepancies, and all of the above. I think it's going to probably point out some things that are going to be very interesting when it comes to, financially where we are versus revenue and things of that nature. Mark is pretty interesting when he presents these audit reports because they utilize a Clint Eastwood aspect of them, he'll tie something to it and all the above. But I think he'll identify some things that we know already relative to, the rates that we charge when it comes to water and sewer. I can tell people will know we have a renewal that'll be coming up one this year relative to fire and police. We will have another one that will be coming up next year, and those are critically important that we educate people on exactly what they are when you talk about millages, because sometimes those are do or die situations, and sometimes people, that bad word tax, when they tie that to a millage, it's really more to it than that. It's in support of fire and police. It's in support of employees, and it's those things that we have to have those renewed. So he'll talk about things of that nature and how important they are, timelines, and getting those on the ballot and things of that nature. That is I go back to, and I want people to understand that's the danger, because I really don't want people to think that this alcohol issue is going to solve a problem, and those millages are not necessary. By no means, let me warn you, by no means is that the case. It's much, much more to it than that. We will be glad to educate people, and we will educate people.
I'll give you a good, elementary analogy here. There's a big burning bonfire, and getting alcohol sales in Pineville is taking a sizable bucket of water and dumping it on the fire. It's going to help, but it's not going to put out the fire.
Yeah, that's correct. And when you talk about a sizable bucket of water, we've been spending a lot of our time the last 3 months, for lack of better words, in dealing with this issue when we've got other critical issues to be dealt with. The budget process, we will begin the budget process probably just as soon as we can get this all squared away and all the above, to look at where we are budgetary wise and start working with some of our departments on our budget for the next fiscal year, 1920. So it takes, you're right. It's been a big bucket of water that's dropped on us, and now we've got to keep from drowning and pay attention to some other things.
another.
The year would be 2020, not
right.
1920.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Go ahead, Mayor.
But some other there are plenty annexations that we're looking at tonight that were introduced on last month. I think there are about 5 or 6 of them relative to different, I guess you could say, like Exxon stations and Smokers Paradise. Obviously, all of those folks want to now be incorporated into the city limits, and we expected that. That's been the other part about all this, from a relative to the zoning requirements and things of that nature, being contiguous to our corporate limits. Does it make sense? And all the above, not just going out grabbing somebody because the almighty dollar, relative to the alcohol issue.
I never thought about that.
Sense? Yeah, does it make sense?
Smokers Paradise for years has said, we're not in Pineville.
Not the Smokers Paradise.
Now they're like, we're in Pineville.
But, Ward 9 outside Pineville still allows beer sales.
Right, exactly.
And now that there is no impediment for that, so they can keep going now.
Yeah. We've got Smokers Paradise, the pit stop at the the intersection of Edgewood and Donahue. There's a Texaco place out 28 East, another place on 28 East at Exxon. There's several places that would like to now be inside the corporate limits. And remind you, when you talk about package sales or whatever, this all started because of Texas Strategies working for the Walmart Corporation and Brookshire Super One. So now that's what's kind of driving all of this.
Let's go ahead and take a break, and we'll be right back to get into a couple other subjects with Pineville Mayor Clarence Fields.
970 AM, 104.9 FM, KSYL. If you'd like to talk to Matt and Jim, call now. 442-8255. 442-TALK.
Welcome back here to Talk Back as we continue with Pineville Mayor Clarence Fields. Mayor, we did get a couple of random questions here.
Sure.
Brian, who is Brian Blackwell, who is our resident, I call him the Rod Knowles Jr. of the show, or the president of the Rod Knowles fan club. Is curious if the city of Pineville or any north of the river officials have had any discussions with walk-ons, as that's been a big rumor, as the restaurant in Alexandria has done so well, and it seems like every walk-ons that opens anywhere does incredibly well. Of course, Brandon Landry opened the original in Baton Rouge. Now Drew Brees is involved, and so on and so forth. But any discussions with Ricky Tompkins or any of those people about a smaller location north of the river?
We've had absolutely no discussion with walk-ons. We welcome the opportunity.
Sure, yeah.
But we are also mindful of the fact that, unfortunately, because of the I don't want to say demographics, but I heard somebody else talking about we versus, let's say, a Lafayette or somebody like that. We've got to have enough people to support, establishment. And there's just some things you don't want to water down, or you don't want to discourage people either. But we know that, depending on the demographics, depending on all of the people that we have here, I don't know if we can support 2 of them, but I tell you what, a smaller one, we give it a heck of a try. There's no doubt about that. And I think it would be successful, but I'm not the guru that makes those decisions when people look at numbers and traffic and all that.
And then I've never seen so much interest in a Seattle coffee company, but people ask me literally every week. We have on Rod Knowles, and then whenever you come back for your monthly visit, their guru about Starbucks. Any word on the Starbucks over there?
No word yet, but there was an opportunity. It somewhat went by the wayside.
Right.
But when you talk about walk-ons, we're going to reach out to people like that. We always reach out to people. Not that we're going to be successful or we get anywhere with it, but it takes time. But Starbucks was we were almost excited at one time, but that deal kind of fell through. It fell through because of the particular location that there was a huge interest in. The numbers did not work out. When I say the numbers, the property value kind of skyrocketed.
Well, I think Starbucks has some weird projections for that for property.
I know the mayor can't comment on this, but to not even have a standalone one in Alexandria is the strangest thing. I mean, they're the king of the grocery store coffee right now.
Exactly. Conditions have to be right, and it takes time. I'll go back to that again.
Let's take a phone call. Good morning. You're on with Pineville Mayor Clarence Fields. Go ahead.
I don't know if y'all said or anything was said about this earlier. As I understand it, the ordinances that the mayor is talking about applies to Ward 9 outside city limits. Is that correct?
No.
The city limits.
We can only apply to what's inside our corporate limits as far as the ordinance is concerned. We don't govern outside of our corporate limits.
All right. Well, how far out 28 East are y'all going? Is that reach? Because I heard Smoker's Paradise mentioned in this, and so I don't know where the boundary is as it stands right now.
Yeah, and let me say this, and that's sometimes the obstacle that we run into relative to boundaries. If you look at it, the boundaries are we have individuals who are inside our corporate limits as far as Crest Industries. I'll put it like that. Sunny Hill Drive, where Guillory's meat market is. That's literally the last point where we have people inside our corporate limits. Over the years, what we've had to do, because it's been gerrymandered, and I'll say that word like that, when opportunity presents itself, we may pick up Ocho Rio, perfect example. That subdivision is inside our corporate limits. So it literally goes to where Crest Industries is, and not any further than that. So we're very careful, and we have some individuals, I can tell you right now, because of this alcohol issue, that are past that want to incorporate into our corporate limits. The odds are that's not going to happen, because it's not about a grabbing money thing. It's about what makes sense and what we can support as far as with the services that we deliver when it comes to fire and police and other things that we deliver. So that's where it goes. But mostly everything up to that point is inside the corporate limits. And there are a few pockets that are not inside our corporate limits. But if opportunity presents itself and it's favorable and it makes sense, and they request us to come inside our corporate limits, then there's opportunity for that to happen from that point back toward Pineville on 28 East.
We'll go ahead and take our final break so we can have enough time to wrap things up with Pineville Mayor Clarence Fields.
970 AM, 104.9 FM, KSYL. You're listening to Talk Back on KSYL 970 AM and 104.9 FM. You can join the conversation by calling 442-8255. That's 442-TALK.
Back here to wrap it up with Pineville Mayor Clarence Fields. We have time for about one or two more calls if the callers are brief, and then we got to let the mayor promote the Light the Night Parade real quick. Good morning. You're on the air. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. That was my fault. Go ahead. Go ahead now.
Okay. We're going to give you a heads up on a coffee shop that's don't know if it's in corporate limits of Pineville, but it's right across from Procter & Gamble, called As the Crow Flies, and it's a really good standalone full-service coffee shop. It's probably in the same shopping center where your gym is. I'm not sure if I caught the right.
Yeah.
Well, I
right.
appreciate that. That will be in the corporate limits.
Okay, well, we don't need to worry about that Seattle base when we got a good one right there.
Yeah, local. Spend your money local. Thanks so much, man.
Thank you so much.
Good morning. You're on the air.
Yes, sir. I was going to ask the mayor, how do you get on the list to get a liquor license to sell beer or alcohol?
How do you get on the list? You could actually come by City Hall and make application. They'll give you the process that needs to be followed. And that, just a reminder to you also, probably after tonight's meeting, if the ordinance gets passed, and then we'll start putting together exactly what has to happen. But you need to start at City Hall.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Hey, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe
So.
he's thinking about opening a business or has a business and wants to think about selling alcohol. Mayor, minute and a half to tell us about everything coming up in the month of February.
Light the Night Parade coming up, Mardi Gras Light the Night Parade coming up February 22nd, which is going to be on Friday evening. So we are encouraging people. We'll start at Louisiana College, not unusual, and in Alexandria, thanks to Mayor Hall and his staff for accommodating us as we roll into Alexandria on the 22nd of February.
So let me see if do I understand this correctly? Is the float going to stop on the Jackson Street Bridge right there or the Purple. What is it? What is the Memorial?
No,
Bridge?
it comes across
No,
the
it comes
bridge
across.
and takes
Okay.
a left on
Takes a
3rd.
left, right.
Okay, that's where you guys are gonna have
In
your
front of City
toast
Hall. We're
in
going to
front-
stop in front of City Hall.
I
So
thought
we'll-
y'all were getting out on the bridge.
Oh no,
and
no,
doing
no,
a,
no, no, no.
It might stop, but that's not the reason.
He's trying to come up with a whole new concept. No, you don't want to stop there, But thanks a lot, Matt.
And then the Mayor Hall and Mayor Fields are bungee jumping, right
I
there
don't
from the
think so.
bridge.
But yeah, thanks to Mayor Hall, we had the opportunity to meet at his office with the Commission of Louisiana Alcohol and Beverage Control Commission, and appreciate him with that invitation to join in on that meeting and everything. But Light the Night, February 22nd, 7 p.m. City Council, the meeting this evening, by the way, at 6 p.m. Legal Committee meeting at 5 o'clock, and then zoning meeting at 5:30.
And Light the Night, the only nighttime Mardi Gras parade in Central Louisiana.
And by the way, Miss Louisiana, Holly Conway is going to be our Grand Marshal.
Well,
That's
then I'll
great.
be there.
Good, I figured that.
For Pineville Mayor Clarence Fields and Jim Leggett, I'm Matthew Dunn. This has been Talk Back. God bless everyone. Take care.
You've been listening to Talkback 970. The views expressed were those of the host and callers, and not necessarily those of Sinlaw Broadcasting.